live. I don't know. It looks like it's cutting out surface, but hopefully you can hear me and see me. Doesn't look like it's totally freezing up, so that's good. That's good. First live stream back. Well, not true. We did record one with Paranoid American on Monday. Shout out to Thomas. That was pretty awesome. Episode is available in his members zone currently. And I believe it'll be public in about a month's time, but it's pretty awesome. And all right, what are we looking at here? We have between Ernie and Oscar, you can see that yellow portion of a jar. I believe that's acidic, but that's kind of what I'm going to be working on while I play some teasers, because these teasers are pleasers. They're too good not to, but I will be editing these professionally and releasing them at a later date, but just to show the quality, the greatness, the goodness, and get a little bit of it out. We're going to play some of the interviews that myself, Julia, and Kate did at TeslaTech 2025. And here we have the amazing Gerald Pollack. So I'll start with a little bit of this interview, and we will continue on through.
All the cells in your body. And the way that you mentioned this in the talk, but one way that you
sounds like you can hear it. Let me know if you can hear. Here.
And run the razor blade along.
All right, hold on. Don't know why that's freezing up, so we will start it again. I believe this is the one. My apologies, technical difficulties. Almost have my new computer up and going, but not quite. Nope. No, that's not the one. All right, I guess we're going to start with the legend Morray B. King, as I see that one here. And
today we are diving into the
mind
of a man.
Share, and then please let me know if you can hear it.
Secrets of all time. How to
Can you hear Julia?
And that nature.
Can't hear. Uh-oh. Okay. Okay.
And I was just having a great conversation with them outside. And
let's share audio.
Energy levels are amazing. It's just energy is infectious. And I mentioned like the cerebral, how the cerebral spinal fluid spins like two streams around a third stream, and the heart as well. And
his eyes really like started twinkling, and it was right. Yeah. So it's such an honor to have you. And it's just, thank you so much for being here, Morray. And yeah, take it away.
True legend right here. 40 years of TeslaTech, essentially. 4 full decades.
Can you hear it now?
Has been presenting and working on ZPE. It is Mr. ZPE himself.
So I guess I'll tell you about my history, because I was just a normal student. Later, I think the professors, after I got into this, called me AB normal. So I suppose that's because I was getting A's and B's in my classes. So but what happened to me? So I'm an electrical engineer, and I'm in the graduate program of systems engineering. And I had the misfortune to pick up a book on, I think it was Beyond Earth. There's just a UFO book, and it was just fun science fiction type reading, right? Just for fun. And what intrigued me was actually the witnesses, right? The airline pilots, the police, right? People that were smeared for reporting what they did, but nonetheless they did so. And I didn't know that much because I'm over in electrical engineering and in systems engineering about the basic physics of gravity. And so I just posed a question because the aircraft sound beyond our science, right? They could do these hairpin turns, you get thrown up against the side of the wall.
Like inertia doesn't exist almost.
Right. And so I thought, well, it must be anti-gravity or something like that. So I just posed the question, is anti-gravity possible? Later, as I learned about gravity, then I realized it's artificial gravity. You're actually getting control of it. And so because I didn't know at that point, I jumped over and made friends with one of the gravitational professors who was really good at the University of Pennsylvania. So I kind of made a deal. I want to be, you be my mentor, and I was a software engineer, and my employment was I do programming for professors. And so here's the deal: I program for you for free, right? And you just become my mentor. He says, well, I gotta throw one more thing into the deal. We have this genius sleeping in the lounge of the physics, but you don't even have a place to stay. He was flunking all his classes. He came in as an undergrad because he didn't attend at all, didn't even show up, right? And he realized this was kind of like an autistic genius. Yeah. So he took him under his wing. He says, and to team up with him, the professor, to do papers on general relativity, advanced papers. I said the kid was so advanced, right? So, but he needs a place to stay. So I said, oh, good. He gave me a roommate. So I remember the day I learned about it was during the oil embargo in '74, and I'm in Philadelphia, and I see the line of cars lining up for the gas station. And he trots in with me with the big book Gravitation by Meisner, Thorne, and Wheeler, like kind of the official book for teaching gravitation theory. And he goes, have you seen this? And he shows me the last 2 chapters of the book. They talk about clean energy.
Okay, so I paused it there for a second just to give some reference. I'm not going to be playing the full video interviews. I'm just going to be playing about 10 to 20 minutes of each one, just a little sampling, and then I will also be cutting in between to some live experiment recording updates of some of my reactors. And now we will go back to a bit of Morray King.
Tweaking the parameters to match the experiment. So there is discussions like that in physics where not everybody's happy with that. Certainly discussions on string theory, they're not happy with point particles in the model because that just takes you back up to infinity, right? You can't have a concentration into zero, right? And so the string was the idea is I'll make a distributed entity so it doesn't blow up on a calculation. And so that's why string theory is popular, because at least I got their foundation correct. But the real problem was the quantum mechanics. This is what the real problem was. So we're just talking about zero-point energy in a sense. Is somewhat straight up, even if you choose to make models to tap it and things like that. You're not getting to the real issue of quantum mechanics, which is what you brought up, yes. This non-local connectedness and things like that.
How space and time gets involved with that sort of stuff.
Well, I'll hit on that exactly, which is popular right away. So I'll set the backdrop on this. So what happened was Einstein like the idea of local modeling, common sense stuff, local. So relativity was that way, even though space and time could be somewhat rubbery. At least when I want to affect something over there, something has to go over there and kick it, right? It's that's called local modeling. So nothing can. That's why nothing can exceed the speed of light. Can influence that way. A very orderly, very common sense thing. And the problem with the equations of quantum mechanics, they were predicting, these correlations in the statistics of it that were non-local. It seems like two things that start out together and drift apart. You make a measurement over here, all of a sudden you're going to affect it over there. Measuring its counterpart. And Einstein was very quick to pick up on this. So they wrote the paper, Einstein, Rosen, and Podolsky. It was EPR, Einstein, Podolsky, Rosen, paper that essentially was meant to be kind of like a refutation how absurd quantum mechanics is. It predicted this non-local connectivity between these. And so this is very quick. This paper is 1935, and quantum mechanics was just getting accepted in 1930, right? So just within 5 years, they were predicting it. And by the way, the other founders of quantum mechanics were indeed bothered by this non-local. That wasn't lost on them, that this was part of the prediction of it, and they wrote on it.
Shout out,
I
Deanne.
remember a book I was gifted, The Quantum Revelation, had to do with going through the historical papers of the founders and them trying to figure it out. What the heck's going on when you have this? Because we're taking ourselves completely out of real reality, right?
Yeah.
That common sense reality, which Einstein hated, right? You got to have that. That's your foundation of your reality. And so it was a refuge kind of saying, well, this can't be. But the problem was the two-slit experiment. The various founding experiments were making, indeed, quantum mechanics looks like is really working, and it's predicting it does this stuff. And so there was a prediction regarding can I measure, quantitatively do an experiment that measures this non-localness and prove that that's either occurring or not occurring. This is a critical experiment. And they didn't quite know how to do it, I think, until 78. Bell, I was one of the physicists, Bell's theorem. He did the mathematical setup of how you could do the experiment. Right. So now we could actually figure out, if we do this experiment this way, you could find out if the probability, based on watching the probabilities as you measure this distant thing. Sorry,
affecting both.
Right. Now we could do the experiment. That was the critical thing. So that was why Bell's breakthrough, a big contribution for Bell's theorem, that allowed the investigation to occur. Right? Is this for real, or was Einstein right? This is crazy, right? So they, and I think it was in 1980, Clauser was the name, it was out of France. They started to do the first experiments, first with light, and then I think other particles. And indeed, with extensive experiments, they proved this non-local connection was indeed real, and that the spooky action at a distance was happening. So if we flash all the way forward to trying to explain this, right? Nowadays, there's something called, and this is very popular right today in physics, ER equals EPR. And those letters stand for Einstein-Rosen for the ER, and Einstein-Rosen derived the wormhole calculation in general relativity, the wormhole. EPR is this predicting this non-local connectivity. So what they have to model it is a wormhole that's connecting these two distant things across space-time, so you have a non-local connection. And the physicists, darn if the physicists they are taking this seriously, they're pursuing it. It's very difficult calculations and lots of interest today. So all this crazy stuff that sounds like woo-woo, the physicists are doing it. They just hide it behind the mathematics that they're doing it. And it's kind of like their little secret of what they're investigating. But they investigate tremendously imaginative models.
Wait, hold
Hold up really quick. I have a good idea. I'm about to do the utmost like wrestling. You guys are familiar with wrestling when someone taps in and taps out.
Oh yeah.
I think we
She's
should
tapping.
spice it up a little bit because this is TeslaTech. We're going to bring in Dr. Yu. He's going to take my spot. I'm going to tap him in. We're going to swap him out. And I think he could spice this up a little bit. I think it's going to get really
Dr.
interesting.
You joining.
Welcome, Dr. Yu.
So-
But it's been a pleasure, Morray. I love you. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I just
No,
met
you're staying. Yeah,
just
yeah.
met Dr. Yu tonight. I'll preface to say that Dr. Yu is trying to make a better model for the ether is what the goal was. But so it's completely creative. We're in a sense we're like opposites because I just play by the rules. I say I'm going to stick with the standard literature, and darn if there wasn't enough there to provide all we want for absurd things. And Dr. Yu said, oh man, you don't have to make it so complex. There's a better way to look at it. So he made his own model. And so I guess you're on.
Okay. Thank you for having me. Well,
My pleasure.
you just gave us a great history lessons, and so I agree with your assumptions. 100%. But I gained this insight is not from the historical study. Actually, from my child dream, some kind of questions. So when I was at a middle school, first time we started a physics book, and some questions bothering me until even after I get PhD degrees. One is electricity. So how could electricity defined as a flow of a charge, right? So who carries the charge? Electrons. Electrons, particles. So it is said electricity is a flow of solid particles inside a solid wire at a fraction of the speed of light. Sometimes 70% the speed light or slower, depends on the conductivity material. I just never could grasp this concept. And also, electricity uses the analogy, water dam, right? The water flow inside of that. So that was the first thing I thought I have a questioning. But the second concept from the middle school is atomic model. This is called the orbital atomic model with the electron orbiting crazily at fraction of the speed of light, constantly, right, around the nucleus. This kind of, for me, there's no difference than called perpetual motion machine. How could a perpetual motion machine, number one, where comes the energy? Keep it going, because it always have a drag, interact frictions, and also interact between neighboring. You were losing energy. You mentioned about that one, right? Yeah, you're gonna losing energy, and you radiate. When you have a circular motion, that's acceleration. You radiate the energy. So number one, where does the energy come from? The second thing, how can you keep it stable? We know atomic clock based on the most stable vibration signals of atoms. So atoms supposed to have the most stable structure and so stable natural frequencies. So we use that one as atomic clock, as a precision. How can you have a constant motion, have that one? So, and also gravity. So the gravity is so similar to what is a Coulomb's law. So I thought they must have a connected, but then my teacher said, no, they are totally different. If you look at their magnitude, gravity is equals to one gravity equals to 0.00030.
All right, I'm gonna pause that one there because that is an epic tease of, well, Dr. Yu and Morray B. King and myself in one episode. It's pretty epic, but I've got a bunch of editing to do. Now, what we are looking at on screen here, you can see the bubbles going up and forming, although it's not doing it nearly enough justice there, as there's literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of tiny little nano bubbles also being produced on that coil that looks just like a black pipe in there, but is so much more. Anywho, just plugged that in a few minutes ago, and it's producing a lot of hydrogen off of just 5 volts of electricity. All right, now to the next teaser video. What do we have? Who do we have up next? Oh, bear with me. My apologies. Technical loading difficulties. Almost. VLC player. It is the best. Oops. But I have.
You're listening to the most electrifying.
Okay.
Or, well, yes, actually, I guess
You have my full name.
Oh.
See commercial crew.
Okay.
That's my.
If you're comfortable.
He's told me privately.
Oh.
But
Actually,
Well, I guess I should
there
actually share a little bit of the behind the scenes footage because this is a teaser. So this is David right here, awesome individual, and he is Dr. Yu's podcasting and radio partner. They run a show together, and he's who brought Terrence and Dr. Yu together and brought them to TeslaTech. And in this amazing interview, we have again Dr. Yu, along with David, myself, Julia, and Kate. So we will start it off right here. And again, please let me know that you can hear the video. Oh, now. Can you hear sound now? Oh, you can hear me, but you can't hear the. Gosh darn it.
Like heartwarming to hear that.
My apologize.
It does have that consciousness aspect. So while we have now, maybe you didn't get a chance.
There we go.
Ideas with the consciousness in yours?
Yeah. That was my question. Actually, it's exactly that. It was my.
Okay, let me define the consciousness in my own term. So the consciousness is awareness. Number one is awareness, and awareness of what? Awareness of self-existence. So existence of yourself and the environment, and the subjective to have a subjective experience. So some kind of thoughts and the feelings and something. So if you use one word to describe consciousness, is awareness. So now, Yuan theory, how Yuan theory is solving this awareness problem. So that's how things can be aware. Aware means over distance. receiving signals. How do we receive it? First of all, is when the open eye, I believe that's what is in the Bible, right? The first to see light. How can we receive light? Receive light is, I will call it magnetic oscillation of magnetic wave in a medium. So that means we are immediately interact with outside is through this magnetic medium. And our reception, I see the way we see the light, we detect through the vibration of electromagnetic vibration signals. And what that signals do, that signals making my pupils, the cell is also electromagnetic particles oscillating. That oscillating create internal called bioelectricity. So that's where whole brain to think. So everything started with magnetism. Magnetism can propagate through space. So that's where the origin of consciousness started with magnetism. The magnetism do the sensing and the receiving, and also personal feelings. Personal feeling, you can feel any part of your body. You've been touched, you can instantly feel. What make you instantly can reaction to, so you've been touched, or you hear a voice or hear some sound. It's traditionally say, hey, so there's a neural system send make you feel. No, I do not believe it. Neural system only very the course, right, goes by. The reason you feel is when you get a touch, you have a displacement, so you have a disturbed magnetic configuration there. You know what happens if you play enough magnets? You change one magnet, the entire magnetic field where everything has to adjust because magnetic alignment changing, right? Instantly changing. I believe this is how human being called physical sensing.
I see what you're saying.
That's part. It's all related to magnetism. I try to make sure if that makes sense to you.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah. So that's essentially the medium and the mechanism of consciousness.
Yeah, medium is transfer information, right? Through the medium vibration. And then the way you feel, you sensing, you receive a light is also electromagnetic effect, right? Because it create the light wave will create your internal electricity through oscillation, create in the body. So now you have its body electricity. And the sensing, every single structure on your body is a magnetic body. As long as it's deformed, in touch, what happens? The signals, internal magnetic field, entire field has to adjust. That signals make you know, okay, I'm being sensed. So that's where I believe conscious brainwave, you're thinking about it, forming electromagnetic signals. I believe that's some thoughts can be received by yourself, you generate it, and can be sensed by the audience if they suddenly have the tuning same frequency signal. So that's where frequency and the vibration comes in, right? Vibrations propagate, and the frequency is the channel you can receive or you do not receive it. If you resent this one, you close it, the signal does not close off, does not resonate with you, you may not receive that signal.
You're on a different wavelength, thus you're not able to be resonant with it. So you started off with it being awareness with the consciousness. So
started awareness over different is magnetism.
Yeah, right, but that's your defining part of consciousness. So then it makes me then bring up the question of, for say plants, where they've now proven that plants are showing awareness of their surroundings, so that are they conscious?
Yes. Plants has, for me, even furnitures used by older owner, right? It deposits all the signatures in terms of magnetic memory and could resonate. My wife very sensitive. She refused me to buy any used furniture. She can sense it. But we had no explanation before until I have the serious actually memory access in, you said a tree, grass, even solid furniture, all matters. We're all connected through, not vacuum, right? This magnetic medium.
We recently interviewed Dr. Diane Howell. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She was featured in the popular podcast series called the Telepathy Tapes, where they interview all these mothers and parents with these nonverbal autistic children who seem to demonstrate an ability to telepathically communicate. And, you know, it was interesting because, you know, she was suggesting something that I thought was fascinating, is that why did we go to language when we had a superior form of communication, perhaps, with this consciousness, this magnetic awareness? Why are we not still using a superior form? But language and symbol comes into play as a means of power and control, right? Because when you introduce language, now you can create treachery and deceit, right? So if you get people to forget their intuitive awareness, now you can create a symbolic thing like, hey, I'm your friend, and then you club someone over the head when they go towards you, or hey, I've got, you know, food and it's poisoned or whatever. So that's where authoritarian power can start to be controlling societies, is when they introduce language, symbolic communication as a form of communication. And when I researched my work in anthropology, I was fascinated by the work of a late anthropologist from Stanford University named Rene Girard. And he talked about the idea of language originating from human sacrifice. That sacrifice is this primitive mechanism of when you join against a common enemy and you kill them or devour them or throw them off of a cliff, the catharsis, when you go to see Star Wars or whatever and the villains are defeated, you come out of the movie theater with your friends and you feel united, right? You ever felt that feeling back in the day when cinema was more important culturally? You'd come out of the movie theater after you watched a really cool movie that was very engrossing, and you kind of feel relieved. Wow, wasn't that cool? That was incredible. That's a vestige of something that we felt much more viscerally in our ancient human past, where we would get a cathartic unification, what I would call a false transcendence that takes place when we join together and devour or kill a common enemy. And that enemy then becomes remembered as the first symbol of chaos that caused bad blood amongst the community. So whenever you have tension in a community, you're always going to have this opportunity where people feel like, hey, can I trust you anymore? We're scarce resources, we have scarce food or whatever, famine, something's causing tension, and that creates a contagion of bad blood. And that bad blood has to be kind of channeled into a safe direction. Otherwise, the human species would cease to exist, because we're highly mimetic, we're highly imitative. And that's where my work came from when I discovered Dr. Yu. I was coming at it from an anthropological perspective. I was looking at the origins of human culture, and Rene Girard was a great influence on me, but I was taking his work and exploring it into different fields and applying it. And I went to see a lecture by Dr. Yu many years ago, and I leaned over and I said, I really think this gentleman has given us a physical explanation for this anthropological pattern of imitation, of desiring what our neighbor desires, and then that ultimately channels into what we call the scapegoat mechanism, which is the heart of the primitive sacred. So everything we have today that's holding us back is a vestige of sacrificial logic. Right now, we believe that in order to solve problems, we cannot rely on nonviolent mechanisms. We have to use systems of coercion. Systems of coercion are all rested upon the notion that it is better that one man die than that the whole nation perish. And we know who said that in history. That was Caiaphas, the high priest who executed Jesus Christ. And that tension still remains in our society today as we wrestle with the nonviolent personhood revolution that Jesus inaugurated in history to liberate.
All right, I'm going to pause that one there. And David, just as much a genius as anyone else at the conference, absolute brilliant mind, as is Dr. Yu. So that's two teasers of two interviews I have with Dr. Weiping Yu of NASA, who just happened to say, and I quote, Bernie, you're way too smart not to be monitored. And that one has stuck with me a little bit. Just like, oh dear. But that's okay. That's okay. We suspected it. We kind of knew it was a thing. Now, what? Who else? We have so many amazing interviews that we did. Is this the next one? Let's see. Let us see. There's so many excellent episodes that we did. Oh dear.
On the positive side, I might have
We
gone
have
another 2 or 3 years trying to find a system.
the one and only
something there. It just took 2 months.
Bob
now
Greenyer.
I had a much harder job because
Boom.
when I
There he is.
Different theories, and at least 69 of them must be wrong. So, given that that is the case, I'm likely to be wrong in any theory that I might come up with or that I absorb from a third party. And so it was a case of really studying all of the literature out there in combination with doing our own attempted verifications and replications of third parties. That led to a particular point where in the last 2 years, I felt the project has learned enough, and I personally had learned enough to give a view which seems to be highly predictive of experiments that have not been conducted yet, things that are repeatable, and things that suddenly emerge out of classified literature and form a pattern. So I now feel comfortable to come to this, for instance, this new community, and share these concepts, because I think it's valuable that both the positives and the negatives and the risks are shared with a community such as this. And I have to say, like, I don't know, for those people that were seeing the streaming pass, and if you didn't get the streaming pass, you should probably still get it, because once you pay for that streaming pass, you get access to all of the conferences, all of the speeches forever. And there's some great things that were put out. But what actually being here is so much more awesome. I met several of my heroes, which was great. And I actually literally yesterday morning, I had a 3.5 hour breakfast meeting, one-on-one basically. And I think you stole a bit of that footage, didn't you?
Well, I captured it.
I haven't even
to
said
share
it was
with you. Right?
Oh, there we go. And it was with Morray B. King, and he has been an inspiration in the early part of my journey, and allowed gave me some waypoints to which technologies might have something interesting to investigate. And I didn't realize that he was very interested in meeting me, because many of the things that he pointed to that were signatures of the process going on, he'd never met the people. But I had the opportunity to go and meet these people, test their claims, and extend their understanding with the project's resources that was enabled mostly by the project members and their own resources and their time, their sweat equity, but also by small donors giving like $10. And so it was a community effort for the community, and it's a community interest company. So coming to a venue like this at TeslaTech 2025 here in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, it was amazing to meet these people. But not only that, it's quite a unique conference, because you have these people here that are actually demonstrating technology. Okay, of course, they have various different, and not always the same, and often not the same, theories behind what how it works, and even quite extraordinary claims for what you're expected to think that the things are actually doing, with not necessarily so well-rounded theories as to or proof that it is doing that, or yeah. But anyway, that's okay, because they're putting themselves out there, right? Because it's here. Yeah, and so like they're putting themselves in front of people who have got a wide range of experience and critical thinking, and also the media is recorded. So because sometimes people discover things purely by accident, by serendipity, and they might have everything wrong about what it does and how it works, but it might actually have an incredible discovery in there, and it might actually do something more interesting than even the things they think it does. And because they put it out there and discuss how it came about, maybe in the future we'll find out the real truth about how it works and the real truth about what it does. But it's only by putting yourself out there, your ideas, your concepts. And on that note, it was great to see Dr. Yu and that guy was the
Terry or something.
Terrence, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were giving some really interesting ideas, and that's what's good about this kind of venue. And it's the first time that really I've seen it at a conference where they're allowing very challenging ideas and paradigm shifting ideas. Whether they're completely wrong or nonsense, it doesn't matter, because this is the kind of approach that I have understood to be the approach in the Soviet sphere, where I've had a lot of pleasure in interacting with these scientists. And they had this thing where every last Thursday in the month, they would open up to any idea in the Moscow Friendship University, and people would come in and they would present their ideas to some of the most brilliant scientists and academics in the whole of Russia. And so it's kind of a bit like that, where you have this venue where people can come in. And I would love something to occur in the West where people can present really radical ideas. And I think actually it was on a podcast recently called Demystify Sci, and they have a sister podcast called Paradigm Drift. And they allow people to come on with whatever their crazy idea is, or extremely good idea, and they give them about 20 milliseconds to get it across. Actually, I think it's about 90 seconds or something.
Right, 90-second pitch, and then if the pitch is received, they get 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so, and that's great. Hello. No, please join us.
We are live, but hop on.
So who is everyone here? I know you, Bernie, but I don't know everyone else.
My apologies. My lovely co-hosts of Julia Cameron.
Hello,
and
Julie.
Kate
Pleased
Love.
to meet you.
Love, yes.
And then we have
Kate Love, great. Great
Lots
name.
of love.
Julie and Kate.
I love that part. Jerry Pollack, that was a huge part. Like he's a hero of mine, and I'm always quoting his electron theory and all of that every chance I get. And I thought it was so hilarious. Bernie, he got footage where Jerry is in a sauna, like zipped up in the hallway in the sauna, and Bob's talking to him, and then Bernie captures it and he goes, Bob's taking a page out of my book where I like to corner them when they're cornered and tell them my theories. And it was so adorable. And it was like, only that can happen, moments like that at TeslaTech, where Bob's talking to Jerry. Jerry's zipped up in a sauna, and Bernie's, pissing everyone off by filming it. Like, just doing
I
it.
gotta have a copy of that footage.
100%.
Oh my
It's
God,
all
yes.
I will have it for you. And yeah, like you were
I just
saying-
wanted to talk to him actually.
Exactly.
And what I wanted to do is share an
you were
experiment.
offering money. To fund
I wanted to offer money to do a control experiment, which is in line with things in the low energy nuclear reaction field and the understanding of Russia, the whole Russian community. That is a massive research program they've conducted since 2009 on these energy solitons, these charged clusters, basically static electricity, but in the neutral form. Well, it is neutral, and it can get bound into water somehow. And it can also lose its potency over a period of 2 days, and it can be re-energized by thermal light. And so it's a good fit for a completely different explanation, but it relies, in my view, on the presence of dissolved oxygen in the water. So I asked him after his lecture if he'd ever done an experiment using degassed water. And that was the question. And so I followed that up. I wanted to follow that up with my reasoning behind that, because I wanted to find out whether, because it looks like all of the things he's saying, like the transfer of information and all this kind of things, is what happens with energy solitons, charged clusters, exotic vacuum objects. There's been 1,000,001 Urzions, radiant energy. There's been 1,000,001 names for them over the last century and a half. But they get bound to oxygen, it would appear. And so the test would be, you boil the water for a bit of time, remove all the gases, and then in a glove bag, which are very affordable, I mean, they're in the tens of dollars, you fill it up with nitrogen and you bubble nitrogen through it, so you get 100% nitrogen. Now, he showed a slide where it had water and a superconducting magnet, and the water parted. Now, the reason that happens is because water is diamagnetic, but also nitrogen is diamagnetic. So if you have nitrogen in there, then it still wants to move away from magnetic structures. Oxygen is not magnetic. Sorry, not diamagnetic, it's magnetic. In fact, it's uniquely paramagnetic. And so any type of north or south pole will be attracted to it and vice versa. And so these charge clusters have a magnetic structure to them, and they get bound to the oxygen. And there's this researcher, very famous, John Bockris, one of the world's greatest ever electrochemists, that was working down in Texas A&M University. And he was actually kind of like a colleague of Martin Fleischmann at times. And anyway, he did a replication of a Japanese researcher who invented the macrobiotic diet called George Osawa. And he had this process where he did carbon arc discharges underwater, and he synthesized iron. And what they found is that the amount of iron that was synthesized, if you look at the nuclear fusion reactions that would get to that iron from the elements that were in the initial reaction, it accounted for the increase in thermal temperature of the water over and above the electrical energy that was put in. But if they boiled the water and they saturated it with nitrogen, there was zero iron production and zero excess heat. If they boiled the water and put oxygen in there, the iron came back, the excess heat came back. And so the concept is that you need the oxygen. And if you think about it, all life uses oxygen. All life. It doesn't matter whether you're a plant doing CO2 and H2O, or you're like us. We need O2 and H2O. And so in everything that's most important to life, O is a critical thing. And I think with plasmatic life, which is a self-organizing negentropic structure in its own right, like we are as living entities, it also needs oxygen as a tool. It's kind of like a catalyst. It's a path too. So I think it would be a very easy test to do. It would be very affordable. And so I just wanted a brief conversation with him in private. But he said, well, I'm going into this thing. And the guy offering him to go into the infrared bath said, oh, you can talk to him when he's in here. And I said, I'm thinking, I don't really want to do this, but he can't run away. So, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, so while we have you, because I know we got just a little bit of time before you have to take off, do you want to maybe give a brief overview of the work you've been doing in relating ancient artifacts and the encoded advanced information in it?
Well, firstly, I saw some ultrasound experiment in India. And to put it in context, I was a choir boy from the age of 5. So I grew up in a very old English church in my hometown. And so I saw all of the imagery of Christendom. I then, when I sung a much, much older cathedral in Chichester Cathedral, and that's like 11th century or something. And then I sung in St. Paul's, which is not so old, I don't think. But again, so I saw all of these kind of visual structures that are part of Christian iconography. Okay, so I had that in the back of my mind, and when I was studying art history in my A level, I chose the subject of Greek ceramics. And Greek ceramics, of course, are pre-Christian, many of them, and even contemporary with or before some of the Egyptian works. And of course, Greece ran Egypt for a while, so there was also some cross-correlation. So I actually made quite a few ceramics, but I studied when you actually had to physically go to the museums. And I got an early start on a deep love of visiting museums. I don't think anyone has got as much patience for staring at objects in museums as me. Certainly my wife and my kids haven't. They're in and out in an hour, and then they're sitting outside doing whatever for about 3 hours whilst they're patiently waiting for me to crawl around the museum. So I stare and I look and I think, why did ancient people, and it's what I found was, and this is this work, is that there was more consistency the older you go back. And so when I came to do this research, and I was told you need to look for neutrons, you need to look for gamma, you need to look for alpha and X-rays. These are all things that they don't have any structure in, that you can measure. They're just blips on an electronic device. And of course, the rumor in the field is that in most circumstances, these things are not present there. So you're being told to look for something so that you can prove that it does what they're telling you it should be doing, and it doesn't produce them. Therefore, you are not doing it. So they've set up the pit in which you can fall, right? Yeah. So I visited a nuclear scientist who discovered the nickel hydrogen energy system, which we've moved the name by popular vote from low energy nuclear reactions. It used to be called cold fusion, and that no one really liked that name. But certainly Pons and Fleischmann didn't. And then low energy nuclear reactions has been the name it's been called for a while. But recently we moved that to coherent energy transformations. And so that's where we are. Anyway, this guy, Francesco Piantelli, he discovered the nickel hydrogen system in a biological experiment. He was trying to, it's a fascinating experiment. He had the nickel rod and he had a mouse cell that he was stimulating with electricity. And the idea was that they would flood it with hydrogen to start the death process in the mouse cell. And then at a particular point after the time of start of death, they would flood it with liquid helium, which is like 4 Kelvin. And it freezes the chemistry. And the idea was to learn what happens chemically as a brain cell dies, and then to find out chemicals that would be able to prevent the cell from dying. Because what it does, it puts up this barrier to survive, and after a while, the barrier is so strong that when the oxygen's then there, it can't switch back on again. And so the idea is to find chemistry so you can go to the top of the mountain, or so that, like, if you have a stroke, you don't die, or you don't lose so many limbs by having. Anyway, this experiment was going on whilst the Paolo di Siena, this horse race, was going on outside, and essentially it started boiling 250 watts of cryogenic healing cooling rather when the helium's coming through. And so he discovered nickel, hydrogen, somehow this is producing a vast amount of energy, and it's at full Kelvin, right? So this is literally cold fusion. And so we went to meet him, and he said, I remember very clearly, he said, don't tell nature what it is, let it show you. So from that point, I thought, okay, I'm not going to let me be guided by people that say, I have to find this for this to be valid. I'm just going to start looking under the microscope at what is going on, or in videos of experiments under operation. And what I kept on seeing is these things that look like ring solitons, like smoke rings, or like a smoke ring that's been trapped halfway into a surface with a vortex and an anti-vortex. Then I started seeing this thing that had like a tornado that was orthogonal to these parts, and then something going on down here. And then I started realizing that these were the same kind of things which are like the fleur-de-lis, which are like these imagery that is part of the Christian faith, but also part of Egyptian architecture. And I thought, oh my God, you've got the caduceus in there, you've got the yin yang, you've got the Maltese cross, you've got the swastika and its inverse, the salvestica, the swastika being the male, the salvestica being the female, that is the sun and the moon. And then I'm saying, oh my God, this is like alchemy. This is like, oh my, and then I lived in India prior to this for 8 years. And so I was seeing on all the Indian temples, all of their imagery. And so it was like, I was tooled up. And it wasn't just that. I'd already been doing 3-dimensional graphics for 20 years. So I could imagine anything as a 2D structure, but project it in my mind into 3D, but not only 3D, into fractal 3D, because I've been doing it for 20 years. And someone would send me a picture of a room or an object, and they'd say, right, this object, I want you to model this in 3D. And so I would have to find like a plug socket, which I know a dimension, and work out from the perspective how big all the dimensions were of the thing, so I could reverse engineer it. So when I see something as an impact of a process in a react as the result of a reaction, I can, in my head, work out in 3 dimensionals what that structure was that did the thing that you see under the microscope. And then it led me to see a particular structure from a researcher called John Hutchison. and in 3 different quantization levels. And for those that don't know about John Hutchison, he was messing around with Tesla gear and radio equipment and
a whole lot of surplus army sonar. And
radar, so he was mixing everything together, and in 1979 he was able to levitate, cause metal samples and non-metallic samples to teleport into each other, to move around, to transmutate, to twist without cold, to glow without heat. So he was doing all of these things, and I realized that maybe what he was doing was something related to the process. So the project purchased some samples of him. I looked at the samples and I found this amazing structure which was fractal and so on. And then in our experiments, we saw these impact marks. Then I found out that this was the same thing that Winston Bostick was seeing when he was trying to convert the fusion technology to a domestic energy in the so-called plasmoid, which is an abbreviation of plasma toroid work. And so it got down to the point where this must be the same thing, and it is the energy, it is the transmutation. And then we started seeing the collapse wave functions, these actual physically macro scale fractal structures that were in the products of the reactors. And I sent this to the Russians that I was working with, and they just threw in the towel. They said it was basically, yeah, we were doing this in classified work in the Soviet period. Here are the papers that were published after the Cold War was over. And these people were saying, I saw this classified information in a Moscow basement in 1988, and what they're going to do to me, the Soviet Union's collapse, so I'm just going to publish it anyway. And then I find out that this is now this fractal toroidal electrodynamics. It is able to manipulate matter at the root level, and so you do not need to consider the Coulombic barrier, because you have means by which you can cohere matter into a wavelet state. It becomes prima materia, and then when it gets born out of that back into a normal vacuum state, it is born as ordinary atoms, but not necessarily the atoms that went in. And it's beautiful, and that's what I had the pleasure of sharing here, a very small subset of the work that we've been able to do over the last 13 years. And it's been a real honor to do that.
And it's always an honor to have you on and around. So we're going to have to do this. You're coming back next year. I think everyone is coming back next year, and then we're going to have to add even more. But what you just said about that coherent matter and the avoiding the Coulomb barrier there, I'm not going to try to explain it right now, but you gave me a revelation in my mind of my own reinterpretation of the double slit experiments, and how a particle is made up of actual fields of coherent standing waves, not anything solid. You already know this. I said that earlier. You're like, of course, right? But that's just in my diagrams. What you said with the not breaking, needing to go through the Coulomb barrier is very relevant in that the waves don't scatter. They remain in these field states of it and then can reassemble.
Well, I mean, it's not the light double slit experiment that confuses people. It's the so-called particle, specifically free electrons going through. And I explain it like this. In Russia, they believe that the fundamental microelectron is an elementary LC dipole, which is a background neutrino, which is a cold neutrino. This is a superfluid that's at 1.97 Kelvin, universe-wide. It's a coherent condensate, and therefore it has one wave function universal-wide through all matter. And so if you put information in there, and because it has an anapole, which is a subset of the toroidal moment, it can instantly receive information, and the information is available all across the universe forever, instantaneously. There is no time delay. Then clusters of these structures form into a gel-like medium. And this is the gel over which light travels, which was the model for the ether over which light travels in the 1800s. And Tesla believed it till he died. He didn't believe the rest of the nonsense. He
knew it.
Yeah. So this gel-like medium. So that is what light travels. And in fact, there's this researcher called Anatoly Klimov, and he kind of found a similar thing that was found by another guy called Ivan Filimenko. So in the 1950s, Ivan Filimenko did a palladium deuterium boiling water reactor, the same kind of thing that was done by Pons and Fleischmann in 1989. He found that it emitted a type of radiation that would cause radioisotopes to decay. If they're beta isotopes, that means it must have been a neutrino-like emission from the reactor. He also found that the process allowed for a technology that would allow screening for radiation. And the radiation you care about is things like gamma and X-rays, which ionize and cause genetic decay or changes in your genetic makeup. Last year at the conference, in the Cold Nuclear Transmutation and Ball Lightning Conference in Russia, which I rebroadcast and translated, they had this plasma vortex reactor, which produces a COP of up to 10. And what they had is they had a couple of elements that combined to produce gamma rays. And they found that for 2 days after the experiment ran, the gamma ray count from these devices went massively down, which means something is removed from the local environment around the apparatus that prevents the passage of gamma rays. And what is that? Well, if the gel has been captured from the local environment around the reactor, it doesn't have the wobbly stuff over which the photons can travel. It doesn't have a medium over which it can travel. You can still see other photons because they're on different quanta. So the double slit experiment explained from the electrons have a toroidal moment. They get fired through, and an electron in a vacuum still decelerates. It doesn't go on for infinity. Why is it decelerating? It's losing energy. Why is it losing energy? Because it's moving through a medium that is the medium that is over which light travels. If it's losing energy through that medium, it must be therefore doing an analog to the Bremsstrahlung radiation, the breaking radiation, which means it's creating photons, and the photons will then produce the interference bands. So it is a particle, and the particle losing its kinetic energy creates photons in the medium that produce the interference band.
That actually makes sense. Although the full understanding, I'm going to have to watch this. Like
Right, I'm going to pause that one there. And because these are just teasers, I'm not playing the full interviews, even though they are ridiculously good. But instead, we're going to play the 11-minute clip that Bob had mentioned there, or Julia actually brought up, but of Bob, yes, we'll say talking with Gerald Pollack. So we'll play this quick, and then we will move on to the next interview.
And what they found was absolutely
Sound
zero
work.
synthesis of iron. No extra raising of the temperature of the water. They then oxygen.
It's a little choppy, my apologies.
The temperature and the synthesis of.
But you can see Gerald Pollack stuck in the sauna.
But it's basically a control for everything else you've done. And so, essentially, you said something after Robert Howard's talk, because if I take water and I put a magnet under it and expose it to sunlight, doesn't matter whether it's a north or south.
I said if you immerse the magnet in water, a simple magnet, north-south, you get an easy force to each one of those poles.
Yes. So in the Moscow Nuclear Physics Institute, they took a magnet, they took a synchrotron and accelerated and produced high-energy electrons. They fired it through a conversion target to produce gamma rays. They had partly the magnetic field was to remove the electrons out of the way, and through you had this radiographic emulsion, which gets a shadow in between the magnetic poles. On one side, you get the blown up charge clusters. On the other side, you get the blown up charge clusters of the opposite pole. In the work of Leonid Aritskev with exploding foils, it produces charge clusters which change the magnetic fine constant of iron 57 left up or down against the control based on an NMR spectrum of iron 57 from production of these charge clusters. The charge clusters are ubiquitous, and so the simple experiment, which I'm willing to fund, which is the control for everything you've done, and basically a magnet will aggregate these charge clusters right next to the pole. And so in the Moscow Nuclear Physics Institute, they said the gamma ray knocks off the charge clusters from the magnetic pole. There's a guy called Perevostikov, and he took 0.4 Tesla neodymium magnets and put them underwater and exposed them to sunlight for 10 days. He then brought 5 milliwatt laser, fired it light can transport the charge clusters, but the coherent light is able to knock them out of the dissolved oxygen. And he produced these birdies on the end. They changed the property of water, and you need to do that control.
Okay, well,
And I'm willing to fund it, so the funding isn't an issue.
no, can you repeat that?
No, but I got it on camera so you can watch it.
That was a joke.
Oh, we love TeslaTech. And you can see Bob has the same strategy of me, of cornering people when they're trapped and forcing your science on them, because that's just how we roll. Right, there's my famous line. I find that hilarious. And we are on to the next one, Thorston Ludwig. For those that don't know, Ludwig's a big wig when it comes to free energy, 0-point energy, hydrogen, fuel production, and so much more. So we'll play a bit of this one because it's pretty freaking awesome.
Plasma technology, magnetic motors, and hydrogen breakthroughs. He co-founded the Berlin Institute for Innovative Energy and Propulsion Technologies. He runs the German Association for Space Energy and has even published studies for the German government on unconventional energy. And my favorite part about him is he's got a big heart. Through the India Care Trust, he helped build massive solar projects in India, including the world's largest solar cooker that cooks over 40,000 meals a day. And he's curious and fearless, and he is on to some pretty amazing things. So welcome, Thorston. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me and doing this interview.
Absolute pleasure. And I first found out about you a good decade ago with the Global Breakthrough Energy Movement conferences that you spoke through. And yeah, with Julia's epic intro there, you are quite the busy man, and it's an honor to have you here, sir. So for ZPE, 0-point energy, it's starting to actually trend, which is a good thing that needs to happen. And as Julia said, you're co-founder of the ZPE Berlin Institute. You maybe want to give a history of your work with it for us, please.
Yeah, well, it's one of those coincidences. I lived for a while in Asia, came back and somehow finished my studies at the Technical University in Berlin. And then one day, somebody I didn't know showed up and said, whoa, we're building these free energy machines here in the university. It was transdisciplinary innovation learning. And the guy who did it, he let everybody build free energy machines. So that's how I got started. And then 2-3 years later, we thought it's a good idea, or somebody in the group thought it's a good idea to make a big conference. So, but then he got happy feet and left, and we finished it. And in the progress, we founded the institute. And then somebody came, gave us some rooms. We started, and so it developed, and we kept going. So sometimes people donate something, or we get rooms, or or people donate machines, and we carry on. And so, yeah.
So basically, this right here is a call out for fake science being audited and hot fusion being $1 trillion of wasted money. We need to give institutes like Ludwig's here just a scraping of that funding, and humanity would be so much further ahead. So you were successfully building free energy devices at the university to start, or it was a testing, or can you give a little history on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got interested, for example, in the Kohler device. That's a well-documented device that was developed in the 20s and 30s. It's a magnetic device that gives out some power. And Kohler was a captain to the sea, actually a submarine captain, and somehow he ended up in Britain after the Second World War, and the British intelligence, they wrote a report on it, and it was declassified in the 80s, and then we picked it up in the late 90s, and we built it, and it does work. Yes, but the thing that is well documented only gives a half a watt. So it's interesting, but it definitely needs more study.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's actually a big thing with a lot of these free energy devices. It's like they work, there's working models of them, but it's a matter of being able to scale it up on an industrial level that it's practical, right? Like, because if it's all this extra work just for that extra half a watt, how revolutionary is it, sort of thing, right?
Well, I'm a scientist. For me, half a watt is like a million watts, because if a half a watt is sure free energy, you discovered a new source, I mean, it's like Columbus seeing the Americas,
Yeah, right. So
but
proof
we
of
know he wasn't the
concept.
first one, but that's it.
There we go. Yeah, I knew there was going to be like audience being like, no, but hey,
Yeah.
No,
Thorston's
actually,
on it. Thorston
my
knows.
name, Thorston, is a Viking name, and the Vikings were there in the 1100s. That's for
Right,
sure.
exactly. Well
But
done.
anyhow, let's stick to the topic. And you were quite right. It would be nice if the society would spend some money on this research, because a lot of times I have to work things alone, and then day has only 24 hours, and I need to do all other chores as well, so I don't get that much time as I wish in the lab. But I don't want to complain. We have our own lab space by now. We have lots of instruments, and so things could be worse.
Right, that's good. And so, in your
You always have to keep going, make the best out of it. That's my position. It's
eternal
we should not-
optimist.
we should not complain. Don't sit down and complain. No, keep going, and somehow, like we just met. You invited me, and so I didn't know I was sitting here this afternoon.
Just kidding, ask you. Kate, do you have a question?
I'd like to make an observation first, is every single one of the gentlemen that we've had up here have all had like something within themselves that created a very, very happy individual, but you guys have all been so pleasant. And I think there's something definitely to that. There's something to that. Like what within these intelligent minds has found this true happiness within themselves. And in that, like, how do you think that your research is helping us move into this new paradigm that we are moving into?
Well, personally, for me, the source of happiness is my spiritual life. And it also has led me to do the things that you reported, and also to get involved in free energies, mainly because I studied ancient scriptures, and I'm a yogi, I meditate. And for me, happiness is like a decision. You can either say, oh, I'm complaining and this and that, or you can watch your thoughts and direct them in the direction, then you become happy.
Right.
At least a lot of the times.
That's beautiful. I love
So
that.
we are manifesting 2025 into 2026, the year that ZPE gets official funding, so we can be all the more happy as we get real equipment. And so I saw in your presentation yesterday that you were replicating an experiment with the Casimir force.
Yes.
And do you want to go into that a bit? Because
yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I have to say I got into the 0 point energy. You had Morray King here. So very early in my free energy career, I picked up one of his books. I don't know how I got it in India. I have no idea how it got. Somehow I got this book, the very old one, kind of used, anyhow. So in that, it was a scientific basis for me, because I'm a physicist, and there was a lot of starting points, and somehow within that research from the 0 point energy, one of the best things is this Casimir effect, because it's simple. You just need some metal plates, for example, and then you create a force. And so a force is nearly energy, at least if you can move something with it, you have energy. So it's quite scientific. But I tell you, I've been to a number of conferences on that Casimir effect. It's super well established. That has taken them quite some decades for that. Okay, I met Casimir personally in '98 in Leipzig, and he was very, seeing 50 years of research. It was interesting. He started it, and 50 years later, there were 300 people just talking about this detail on the effect. And yeah, well, but even there back then, not that many people were bold enough to say, okay, let's use it for something. They are afraid sometimes, want to stick away from that. But I think as things are changing, I hope also that will change, and yeah, as for me, it's a good starting point. And then, yeah, let's see.
Right, and it's as things are changing, there's hope. And how much have you worked with hydrogen, and how much do you see of hydrogen being implemented, not on like the industrial scale, but like a water engine, sort of Stanley Meyer style, where it's allowed to be free?
Yeah, hydrogen and the whole water thing is really great. We've tried different things, like a hydrogen kind of tube, and so, but yeah, it didn't do what it was supposed to,
Okay.
but that never discourages me. It's the only thing is the people who finance something, they don't like it if in the beginning of the project you kind of see, oh, there's some measuring error, and it's not really as good. But I think that has to be overcome, because hydrogen has a lot of possibilities, like Stanley Meyer, the water splitting, or what we've seen on this conference. You don't even need to split the water anymore. You make a vortex, or you make these plasmoids, and create an engine. I've actually I got an engine at home and rebuilt it. I was running on water for a couple of minutes. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was ultrasound and bubbles, and obviously, of course, in the middle of the winter, and you had to. It was freezing cold outside. You had to watch that the water doesn't freeze and so forth. But it did work. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm up in Canada, and it's quite cold in the winters.
Yeah.
So you're not. It's nice to meet you, but we'll have to do another interview in the future after you have a chance to see some of the stuff I've done. But I've created a self-running hydrogen reactor out of two plastic saltwater containers and just scrap metal, of creating differentials between the electrodes that then creates a sustained reaction.
Yeah, that's great.
But also with electrolysis in the winter, that just plugging in a 5 volts into the reactor that's pure ice, it actually still melts and is producing hydrogen, which I found fascinating, unexpected, but essential if making a water-powered car.
But the cold was not our problem. The problem was that you had the electrode just above the water level, and it kind of, the water was not still enough, so it kind of moved around, and you have the bubble from beneath, and then water gets somewhere where it's not supposed to, and then the whole electric thing gets mixed up, and then you run into problems that you have to overcome with a lot of time and research.
Yeah, and you were saying you were doing it through what method was it? A sound acoustic or
ultrasound?
Ultrasound.
Yeah,
that you're
to
splitting
make
the
bubbles
hydrogen.
and fog.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, to do the misting, the ionic, or what's the right word? The ionizer.
Yeah, it was like a drop of gasoline on this, this, what was his name? He died a few years ago, unfortunately. He came a couple times to the conference.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, well, forgot. Anyhow, but so that's, you see, the same with a Kohler, you start something and you don't have all the information, you need to overcome the projects, but just, no. Paul Pantone is another good story.
right?
Yeah.
There's so many. There's
He used to come to this conference, you know.
That's why I brought up the name.
And
I was like,
not when it
yeah.
was still in Salt Lake City, and it was quite great. But then it was a little bit of a sad story how he got into the jail, and he didn't do him much good.
Right, and so that's another aspect of in this industry that's concerning to certain inventors, that it's like it if you apply for a patent, majority of the time it's going to get ruled as national security and it'll never see the light of day. Or it'll be like a situation like that happened to Paul Pantone, where they're like, oh, we rejected it, it doesn't work, so therefore legally anything you're selling legally it's a fraud because we say it doesn't work even though it's working.
Well, the story with Paul Pantone is more that he didn't come alone. He came with his wife, and then somehow they got, in personal trouble, and she used it against him and told the people he thinks you can run the engine with water. So she wanted to get him out of the way, and it worked.
Huh.
It's a lot of time different. I met John Hutchinson up in Canada. And he had this room full of equipment, and so then one day the fire department came and said, you're living in a residential wooden building and he had chains going through the room so it wouldn't break down, so they kind of, the trouble he had was basically gun laws, because in Canada you cannot have a machine gun on your balcony, and that's what he had. It was not just a machine gun, it was like an anti-aircraft from a ship,
right?
This is a war weapon, I mean, that's
take it out commercial aircraft with it.
Well, you can get into trouble then, and then if people then listen to it in faraway lands, they hear, oh, John Hutchinson got into trouble with the law. Yeah, but not really because of his free energy machine,
right?
or fraud or whatever. No,
he was doing experiments that apparently it was like shaking the building, or there's some sort of like crazy effects that had the neighbors.
Because
but that's what then called the police, and then they came, and then there was the gun there, and it's like, what the heck is
the gun was on the balcony, and everybody could see it,
Okay. Wow.
because he didn't fit in the room. Anyhow, John was a great guy. It was a lot of fun, but it was also very difficult. I mean, Jean Manning, I knew her for some time, and she kind of managed that I could talk to him and so forth, because he's a real inventor. It's not easy to.
I've had the pleasure of interviewing him myself 4 times. It's
if he likes you, he does what he does at great lengths.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't like you, he rather clears out a basement than to talk to someone who wants to give him $1 million or something.
Absolutely. But it's the pure, he does it for the pure love of invention, right? And that's what brings the happiness and joy to all the people like yourself and everyone that's been
we had great fun.
Oh man,
you guys are like the new rebels, right? Like total rebel badasses, like the diving down into this whole world.
Well, on one hand, yes, but on the other hand, we have to live and somehow get this forward, so yeah.
So how do you see this, the 0 point energy? How do you see it impacting us on an everyday level?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm still wondering when we will actually have machines out that you can buy in the shop or actually use. We, from a scientific point of view, I think we're more on the research level. We don't really know enough to just build something, so it can change any minute. I mean, I know a lot of projects which are kind of, there could be a breakthrough any moment. I don't know how long it will take then for things to actually come into the shops, and so that's,
are we talking about household products? Are we talking about vehicles? Are we? Well,
you see, I compare it to the traditional new energies, these like wind and solar, and for maybe 30 years ago in the solar, you also was on the very experimental level, and then somehow it got commercialized all of a sudden, and more and more and more, and now there, the problem are lawyers and laws and regulations, and that's a big thing there. The technology is long not the problem anymore. So we don't know what happens here. We also don't know the health effects. Some people are mentioning this, we should be aware that they could have effects on us. And yes, I'm an optimist. I think they are just good, and they are healing devices, and there are good points for that.
Right?
But they could be dangerous, so we shouldn't be too careless.
So for instance, like I'm not going to say his name, but there's one guy that was out there selling types of coils that you'd then put specific frequencies through for doing healing. He was marketing it as like this cure and stuff, and he gave me one to try out, and I looked at it, I'm like, this is not the right geometry. I turned it on, and the just incoherence, and I seized up, and it's like, that's not healthy. And there's that, yes, there is that technology that will heal, but this is just the very basics, and you're going to be able to do just as much damage or worse than good if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think this is one problem, that people are too free thinking, but the main problem will be that if something really comes close to the market, to not overlook this, and not think we just build it and bring it out into the market. No, we should keep that in mind. And then that can take longer then, because if people find out there is some side effects or so, but we also don't know how long this society will run in this way. I have my doubts that it will. I see some major changes coming up. I don't know exactly how, and it's not the place to speculate on that, but
I think it is, and it's through consciousness. So let's get into the consciousness a little bit. And specifically, I asked Bob Greenyer ahead of time. I was like, Bob, I'm hassling you for one last thing. What's a question I should ask Thorston? And he said, the conscious control of electrons trapped in spin states through telepathy. Are you doing work with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We do. Actually, we had this really cool experiment with Ron Bryan from Texas A&M, and he, with a lot of thinking, he came up with the idea of to trap a single electron and see how we can change it with the mind. And we spent 5 years and nearly $1 million to make it happen. But then we realized we need another couple of years and another 3 million, and nobody gave it to us yet, So, but anyhow, we learned a lot. And yes, I have made now a much more simple experiment with the Casimir effect, because if you do the calculations and you see if you restrict space with metal plates, then you get very small effects. If we think that, because there's a consciousness research from the Peer Lab, the Princeton Engineering Anomaly Research, and they found that you can change random processes, with your intentions. So if we apply that to the 0 point energy, it's like 10 to the 70 orders of magnitude difference. So there's a really big potential. So I've set that up, and the experiment is running. I just now have to, structure, get people or myself to test it and solve a few minor problems, like the user interface, stuff like that.
So everyone that is watching, put your intention into charging your is the Casimir effect or still the electron one?
That's the Casimir one. Yeah, the other one
increasing the Casimir force coming out.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, if we learn how to change the 0 point energy, then we can make the machines work much better, And so sometimes in the past, there have been machines that only work with certain people.
Yeah.
And for me, that is actually very easy to explain. It makes a lot of sense. Because if you have the right atmosphere, the right mental projection on, then you can make things work.
I actually have a personal experience where I had a little electrolysis reactor that was powered by a C battery or whatever, but it had run out. It was dead. Okay. And I could been dead for about a week, and my friend came over and he looks at me, he's like, I bet you can get it running with your mind. And I was like, looked at it, and son of a gun, starts bubbling up, and I'm like,
Wow.
all right, well, look, like seeing
Yeah.
is believing, right?
Yeah. We should trust ourselves more. This is possible.
Right, like it's not a hallucination, it's your intuition, which is your higher self. And
Yeah, we've just been brought up that that's not possible, and if you think it, but actually it's like that, you know, and it's through stories like this, because also our consciousness research, I think you or somebody else asked what came out of it, and the thing is, to do it like the Princeton people, you need like 3 million people, 3 million runs. You need a lot of funding to do that, or a lot of time. We had like a couple of hundred people, you know, but we had great incidences, you know, like events. We had like a jam session with different instruments, and so it was, you could definitely see that there's something going on, you know, like your story there, you know.
energy.
Yeah, you could, but it's not enough yet to make it into a scientific thing. And I'm not sure if the consciousness works like that, because, you know, if you have an intention on something, okay, but if something depends on it, like your life, or, you know, or your loved ones, or something important, then your energy is different, you know, it's more important. And it's so the things that happen, they usually happen in the flow of things. Yeah, and not so much in the scientific setting, you know, where you want to concentrate on a lab thing, you know. So that's why it's not the consciousness is not so, you know, not so much in tune with the scientific paradigm.
The collective is powerful. So the collective is powerful.
Yes, that's actually also something that came out of the Princeton studies. You know, if more people join, yes, then absolutely.
Yeah, like if your family relies on it, then of course that collective is going to make that more powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, if you make a group effort or a big group effort, we can do a lot more. Yes.
So we need all of humanity focusing on ZPE, or the Casimir force increasing, coming out.
We are the superheroes that we have all looked to and thought they were so cool, and we didn't realize that we are those superheroes.
Yeah, and everybody's watching as part of this superhero thing. I think we cannot do it alone, you know. So yeah,
superhero within us all.
Yes. Oh, human beings in general, we are.
Yeah.
So you're saying a bit that you're a yogi and into meditation and stuff.
Yes.
You want to get into a bit of that, seeing as we have a well-experienced remote viewer here and the different out of bodies and stuff. Yeah,
in my personal life, I found that that's very important to watch your own thoughts, and, you know, to become calm and peaceful, and actually know yourself in the sense of an eternal light being that we really are, and we can't die, you know, it will go on, but it's very important that we do the right thing and think the right thing, and don't waste our time, and make something out of it, and not become a hindrance to other people, not hurt other people, but to do something. And that needs a lot of reflection and work. And so meditation for me is a very big part of that, because you kind of you go back inside, you watch your thoughts, and you select them also. You guide them to peace and happiness.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, you're filming. Okay. We have another Bob question. Your experience with the thunderstorm generator.
Yeah, it was a great happening. You know, Malcolm came down. I met him here, and I'm in touch with very nice, very good people in Switzerland. They organize conferences in the German region. So somehow they were in the need of a good highlight, and because of the stream, they saw, and then somehow we invited Malcolm, and I don't know if you've communicated with Malcolm. It's a
It's
good challenge. You know?
I'm still waiting on a couple of replies. Yeah.
Anyhow, we got it working. He came to Switzerland. They set it all up. He came there. Some of the stuff didn't go through customs. Somehow got lost, and we went into the Swiss Home Depot thing, and you can't get certain things there. In Germany you can get them anywhere, but they're very safe there. So you can't get any gas or stuff. Anyhow, we transcended all the problems and got a working machine within 1.5 days, and it was good fun.
That's
And Bob
impressive.
came, he took some pictures and stuff and observed it, and with a couple of other guys, and first they asked me to help, and then I saw the list of people, and they're all people who have no lab experience, don't know what they're doing at all, I said, oh no, how are we gonna do this, and then there came a second list, and then there was this engineer who was studying Schauberger for 30 years. He's like the head of the other organization, and he's a very good engineer. Then I said, I was relieved. I knew when Klaus Rauber is coming, I knew that no problem, and he got it working.
That's amazing.
It was good fun. Yeah, so it did work, but we had to overcome a lot of challenges. It wasn't working totally automatic, Malcolm had to kind of pull on strings and so forth. And then in this Swiss building, running the motor, we were so lucky not to set off the fire alarm.
So,
Yeah. Well, I can also say, what to do. But every time you go then for measurements, like for example, the German guy I was mentioning, long story short, somehow we packed it all in one car, drove it over to Germany. It ended up somewhere in southern Germany, and they made a lot of measurements. And these guys are very thorough. So they found out that these measurements that were advocated, they're part of it is because there is an inflow from the backside, and they got expensive equipment. And then somehow these things got stuck because Malcolm didn't send the latest stuff and so forth, But this is
part of Malcolm.
Part of the story. I mean, Malcolm, I hope he's doing fine, and moving forward, we should not be hindered by these things, because I've just been to Korea. That was fun. There was
jelly.
Somehow I ended up on stage and translating from English to German. Okay. So, and then somehow I ended up in this group, and we looked at this Korean technology, but also there we found out that the great measurement, they had like 10 times, 20 times, 17 times over unity. But it is such a good project, there's 30 people in 2-story building, working for years, spending, I don't know how many millions already. But somehow they are not using the measuring equipment in the right way, So if you really look at it, it's not really over unity, But we have to overcome this. We really shouldn't think it's a bad thing. No.
Right, because it's just engineering. It's real science.
It's real
part
science,
of the
but
process.
the inventors who have spent so many years, so much time, and then every time they do it, they see that they have 17% or 20%, 20 times over unity, and then all of a sudden, if they would change it, they would see, we don't have over unity at all. It's kind of a tough thing. You think you got there already, and you got maybe a little bit lazy or comforted.
Right, but
we have to face it.
Yeah, you have to face reality of
That's
it.
it.
And
it's easier to say than if you have 30 people working for you, and and you have to keep things running.
I haven't had that experience, but I've definitely had the, hey Bob, check this out. Bernie, I need you to reproduce this, and no, come on now.
Yeah, well,
Right, but it's reality. It's real science. It has to be reproduced. And it's like, okay, so yeah, you're not at 17 times over, but maybe you're at like equal at least, or something like that, then it's just stepping it up to the next generation.
Yeah, or if you see you only have 30%, then if you have the right measuring equipment and you do something, you at least see how it's progressing. and then you can get to the real thing. And there are people that stand by, you know, they're actually hurting themselves a little bit because they already have investors from Middle East, but if they see they're not motivated to get more money also, you know, but it's
It's the progress.
Yes, thank you so much.
A question of when you said with the thunderstorm generator,
Oh, all right. I'm gonna leave it at a cliffhanger right there because again, these are teasers. I have to fully edit them, and well, we're gonna leave go like that. And all right, what was I doing here? I took an electrode out of that yellow and the top. There's a whole bunch of different monomolecules on it, but the water was purple. So I took a sample of that, now sealed it up, and then you have the electrode in the front in that new jar there. Okay, we shall continue with, let's see here. Still need to play a little bit more Jerry Pollack and also some Steve Ellswick, of course, the host and director and organizer of TeslaTech, making it all possible. Also got an interview with him that we will play a little teaser of as well before this is all said and done. Oops. Oh, should I play? Oh, okay. I'm gonna play a little bonus before the recording, where I'm telling Gerald Pollack about my own work a little bit. Ooh.
like the black being the carbon state, or the white being the calcium state, the yellow being the sulfur state. But instead, I've been able to use with pure metal anodes 24 karat gold, 24 karat gold for my monatomic gold, 100% or 99.99% silver for the anode and cathode for the monatomic silvers, aluminum, copper, so forth. But that I've been able to take over 15 different pure metal electrodes as anodes. Been an instrumental part of myself trying to understand my own work and finding examples of your exclusion zones and yeah.
Well, you're very kind. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Anyway, looking forward to whatever you want to discuss, at least about topics of discussion about which I know something. Happy to be a part.
Well, maybe do you want to just give us a brief rundown of what you covered today in your presentation? Because one part of the streaming is we got a shill for Steve for people to buy the online passes to like actually view this amazing event, because I don't know if he's broken even yet, and I don't want Steve washing dishes. So on that case, what will people be expecting to see in your presentation?
Well, I'm happy to wash dishes with Steve, if that works. You know, I have experience. I have a lot of experience, so no problem at all. What I presented was a phase of water that we all know that water has, we've learned that water has three phases, a solid, liquid, and vapor. We discovered a fourth phase, and this phase is, it's kind of like a liquid crystal. It's in between solid and liquid, and it has the consistency of like honey, or the consistency of a gel. And it fills your cells. It fills all the cells in your body. And the way that I didn't mention this in the talk, but one way that you can discern that the water that's inside your cells is not liquid water as the textbooks assert, but is this kind of gel-like water. You take a razor blade, if you have guts enough, and run the razor blade along your forearm harm. Okay, and I know there aren't too many people textbooks assert, and that makes a big difference because you know, if your biological understanding is built on the idea of liquid water, but it's not liquid water, then your understanding is going to be wrong. And that's largely what I was talking about today. I went through a history of understanding about water, and the history begins, our work stands on the shoulders of giants, and one of the giants was a guy named Gilbert Ling, who many people think should have won at least 2 Nobel Prizes, but his ideas were maybe too unorthodox, and so he passed about 5 years ago, and not too many people knew about his work, but a handful, well, more than a handful of people, and that's how we got started. I was in a different field. I was in the field of muscle contraction, trying to figure out how muscles work at the molecular level, how the proteins, mostly myosin and actin, interact with one another to produce motion, force, whatever. And one day I was exposed at a conference to the work of this guy, Gilbert Ling, and I was blown away because he was asserting that the water inside your cells and my cells is not liquid water, but he called it structured water. Other people would call it ordered water because the water molecules, he was arguing, the water molecules were not randomly disposed, as is the case in liquid water, but instead the molecules were arranged, were ordered like soldiers at attention, lined up. And I was just blown away by what I heard at that conference. He had so much evidence, and there were other people who had evidence to support his point of view. And so I went home and back to Seattle, and I don't trust myself because I don't know, maybe I consider myself something of a romantic. I hear some idea and it appeals to me, and I jump on it. I get really excited about it.
Love it.
And I got excited about this. So just to make sure, you know, like pinching yourself to make sure this is reasonable, I gave one of his books, and his books are really difficult to read because he lacked the gift of clear writing. Anyway, I gave it to a few of my students who I thought would be capable of understanding and evaluating. And really what I asked, I wanted confirmation that I would not be on a wild goose chase if we started pursuing the field of water and following onto Gilbert Ling. And they confirmed that in their view, his idea was extremely cogent and reasonable, and it was filled with experimental evidence. So it was then that I jumped into the water, so to speak. And when we started, it was just trying to confirm what Gilbert Ling was talking about. Well, we did confirm that the water was ordered, but we found other features of the water that I think are really important for understanding. And without going into huge detail, without slides, it's a little bit difficulty, but we found that the water was indeed ordered, and also
you found that there's also different particles of water that start forming, and this is a key part of my own work. And if you don't mind maybe getting into a little bit more of the technical details of those different particles and how they arrange.
Well, the particles, I'm not sure which particles you're talking about, but the water, the water forms this different kind of water. This fourth phase of water forms clusters. The clusters are really large. They're not necessarily particulate in nature. They can, it's actually surfaces, sheets of water that they form honeycomb sheets. So you start with a surface of some sort, like a protein surface or another macromolecular surface.
Like a membrane.
It could be the membrane, but also the molecules that are lodged inside the cell. You know, proteins, for example, I think it's something like 70% or so of the solids inside the cell are proteins. And proteins, they kind of do the work of the cell. And on the surface of the protein, one of these sheets or layers of, we call easy water, easy to remember, easy water. It actually stands for exclusion zone, because this kind of water excludes extraneous material.
Like that right there.
Well, it could
At the
be
very
like
top.
like that. Yeah, sure, it could be. So these sheets stack on one another, and they'll
field lines.
yeah, that could be yeah, indeed, it could be exactly what we found. Yeah, the sheets stack on one another, and you can get up to, we've seen 1 million sheets, for example. They're molecular thickness, so they're pretty thin. And this easy water that we found, it could be up to 1 millimeter, for example, which would be, you know, roughly, if my arithmetic is right, maybe 1 million of these sheets. And one of the important things is the sheets typically are charged. They're not neutral. They're negatively charged. And the region beyond the sheets are positively charged. So when you have negative next to positive, you have a battery.
Exactly.
And we demonstrate proof of principle. You put one electrode in the negative part and another electrode in the positive, and you get electrical current that flows. And the electrical current can light an LED, for example. So we know that they are genuinely, the charges are genuinely separated. And why is this important? It's important because this is the water that fills your cells. What it means is that the water that's inside every one of your cells contains energy, right? So you kind of think about where does the energy come from? You know, you run a marathon. Where do you get the energy? Well, the accepted understanding is that it comes from the molecule ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And in theory, what it is that this has got 3 phosphates attached to it, and one of them has a particularly high energy, and that high energy is the energy that runs your life, right? That was discovered in 1941 by a guy named Lippincott, who was a well-known, I think he was a Nobel laureate, and everybody was excited about that. Everybody, finally, we figured out what's the energy that runs your body. Well, it turns out that it's not quite so clear as that. There have been people who have done experiments. There's one group in particular, Morales and Podolsky. I happen to know these 2 guys because I was in the muscle field, and they're in the muscle field. And these are, you know, excellent researchers, and they found there's no such thing as a high energy phosphate. So, and others confirmed essentially their point of view. So right now, I guess the situation in the field is there's one idea that ATP supplies the energy, and that's the prevailing view. And there's another idea that it doesn't, you know, and if it doesn't, the question is, what does?
I believe hydrogen. I believe hydrogen through water.
Well, it could be another. That is something that could be studied. But what I was leading toward is this battery-like effect that we have confirmed.
Oh, yes.
Is a supplier of energy. So we don't know at present. We did experiments, and we found out that this battery-like effect helps to run your cardiovascular system. It probably runs a lot more in your body, but we don't know for sure whether ATP is really doing the job, or electrical energy that I've been talking about shares the role. Could be if the idea of ATP running it is wrong, it could be that all of our energy comes from this battery-like effect?
I believe it is that battery-like effect, and I've actually engineered your exact battery-like effect and how I do my multi-layered electrodes for the anodes and cathodes for my self-running hydrogen reactors now.
Oh.
So I've created with zero electrical input in these just saltwater 2-jar batteries with scrap metal that produce and run hydrogen.
How rude. I just cut myself off, but we are just about at the 2-hour mark, and I need to get some rest as tomorrow I have 2 streams to do. We're doing League of Extraordinary Inventors. Michael is in town. Shout out Mike Faraday Research. And yeah, so he's in the Rocky Mountains, so I will be hosting it. He'll be joining in. We have a couple of special guests. That will be at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. And then after that, we have a second stream that I will be doing interview with Mike Forrest of Alien Carvings, our 25th or maybe even 26th interview together now with some major updates of all of his parts out of Mexico. And it just keeps coming out more and more. As well as here is that purple gold and silver that when going through U.S. Customs did not register or registered as carbon, one or the other. They would not tell me which one it was, but they still did let me know that it was one of the two, and thus metamaterial confirmed. On that note, love you all. See you tonight. Wishing everyone a blessed weekend. Ta-ta.
You crazy mother. Yeah.
It's just BurnEye.
Hey, Bernie, just like last week, huh?